Back in the late fall of 2004, I was chopping wood near the side of my house when my dog Ginger came up beside me. She looked tense, hair slow, eyes wide, tail stiff, like she'd seen something she didn't know how to make sense of. I'd had her since she was a puppy, 9 years old by then, calm as ever, never spooked by anything, not thunder, not strangers, not even an occasional bear. So yeah, I knew something was wrong. At the time, I figured she found a den animal or something equally unpleasant. A raccoon maybe? That kind of thing happens out here. What I didn't expect was for her to lead me to something that would change the way I looked at the woods forever. My name's Dale. I live a quiet life, always have. Small Wisconsin town, small place where I was born. I've only moved once, just over a decade ago, after I saved up enough to buy a place with more land, 15 acres, mostly forest, with some meadows and a long driveway that stretches out to the road. Peaceful, private, or at least it used to be. I bartend on weekends. The rest of my time is spent designing and building furniture in my garage. I work with my hands. I'm used to order precision, so I guess what happened stands out more because of that. It was the first time something didn't make sense. It didn't fit, and it couldn't be explained away. Ginger kept looking back at me as she walked, her body low to the ground, like she was tracking something dangerous. I grabbed the flashlight. It was already getting dim, and I followed her past the edge of the meadow, where the trees started getting really thick. The deeper we went, the more things felt really weird. It was quiet, too quiet. No rustling leaves, no birds, not even wind. Just the sound of my boots and Ginger's soft whimpers. The air felt off too, colder, but not like a weather change, more like a cold that pressed against your skin. Like walking into a room that doesn't want you there. Then came the smell, sweet and sharp and rotting. I covered my nose with my sleeve, and that's when I saw her stop. She stood completely still, tail tucked, eyes locked ahead. I pushed through some branches and froze. A sharpened log, at least 30 feet tall, was jammed into the earth at a crooked angle. Skewered near the top was a man, heavy-set, jeans, jacket, eyes wide open, mouth gaping. His head hung low, neck bent in an impossible angle from the way he was impaled through the lower back. The flies made a halo around his face. It looked like something out of a nightmare, or a warning. I stood there trying to process it. I'm not a stranger to seeing dead animals in the woods, but this was different. This was deliberate. And something about the whole scene didn't feel human. I couldn't recognize the guy. Maybe a hiker, maybe someone who wandered off a trail. There are paths not far from my property, bird watchers, casual campers, but this was way off the beaten track. And the construction of the thing, it wasn't just a sharpened tree branch, it was designed. The tip had been shaved down to a needlepoint, smooth and perfect. I've worked with wood long enough to know that kind of precision doesn't happen with hand tools. You'd need a lathe or some kind of industrial-grade machinery. And even then, hoisting a 200-pound man 30 feet in the air, no chance a regular person did this. Ginger started pacing. Her whimpering was louder now. I should have called the cops right then and there, but part of me hesitated. Not out of fear, just this weird gut deep sense that involving anyone else might make things worse. Like this was something meant to be left alone. But after a minute, I snapped out of it. I told Ginger we were heading back to the house. That's when I heard the sound. Something moving on the other side of the log. Heavy. It was deliberate. Not a dare. Not a bear. And not trying to stay quiet. Ginger whimpered louder. She backed towards me. Her body shook. I whispered, "Let's go." Tried to take my voice steady. I didn't want to startle whatever was out there, or let it know I was afraid. We walked slowly. I kept one hand on Ginger's collar and the other gripping the flashlight like it was a weapon. She kept trying to turn around. I didn't let her. I felt like if we ran, it would chase us, like it wanted us to run. About halfway home, I let myself look back, but just barely. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw something standing near the impaled man. Tall, too tall, bipedal, pale brown skin, and what looked like antlers or horns curving out from its skull. I didn't look directly at it. I couldn't. Some instinct told me not to. Not fair. Exactly. Something deeper. Like staring at it would change something in me, or maybe in it. I don't know. But Ginger clearly felt the same as I did. She was trembling. Every part of her told me, we don't belong here. Run. When the house came into view, I finally let go of her collar and said, go. She bolted. I ran too. I half expected to hear something behind me. Branches breaking, thudding footsteps, but there was nothing. Just silence. We made it inside. I locked every door, grabbed my old shotgun, but the woods stayed quiet. Too quiet. I called the sheriff and told him what I found. Left out the part about the thing in the woods. What would I even say? Hey, there's a giant antler creature playing executioner in my backyard. Later that night, I got a call from a deputy. Said they went out there and didn't find anything. Not even the log. Told me to keep an eye out and let them know if I saw anything else. He sounded off. Like he was reading from a script or lying. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept staring out the window. At one point, around 2 a.m., I saw lights. Soft, pale blue flickering between the trees way out in the woods. No sound, no movement. Just that eerie, pulsing glow. I thought about going out there with my flashlight. But no. Every part of me said not to. I shut the curtains and sat in the dark. Next morning, I called the sheriff again. Told him about the lights. He said he didn't know anything. Sounded irritated, like he wanted me to stop asking. Since then, I haven't seen the creature. But sometimes at night, Ginger still growls at the woods. And twice now, I found faint footprints in the snow near the edge of the trees. Huge ones. Human-shaped, but off. The toes are longer, the strides too wide. I don't go out there anymore, not past the tree line. Whatever's out there, it wants to be left alone. And I plan to do just that. Hi, my name is Caroline. I had just graduated high school when my dad took me on a helicopter ride through Denali National Park. It was something I wanted to do for years. See the mountains from above, spot some wildlife, fly on a helicopter for the first time. My dad said it was a perfect graduation gift, an unforgettable adventure. He was right. I just wish I could forget it. What we saw up there has haunted me every day since. For years I couldn't even talk about it without crying. Even my closest friends didn't know the full story. Just as something happened that changed me. I've been in and out of therapy since then. And now, after all this time, I think I'm finally ready to tell someone who will actually listen. So here it goes. It was just the three of us that day. Me, my dad, and the pilot. Roger, an old military buddy of his. Roger was quiet, serious, but seemed comfortable in the cockpit. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, cool air, the sun painting long shadows across the snow-covered peaks. I was giddy, pointing out every ridge, every distant patch of forest. Then we saw them moose, or maybe elk, dozens of them, grazing in a wide valley. Some had huge antlers like nature was just showing off. I remember laughing and saying it felt like we were filming a nature documentary. Everything felt magical. But that feeling didn't last too long. We were maybe 20 minutes into the flight, flying low through a pass between two peaks, when Roger suddenly stopped responding to our small talk. His hands tightened on the controls. He leaned forward slightly. I didn't notice anything strange at first, but then I caught my dad's expression. He was staring out the window with this look I'd never seen on him before. Tight-jawed, pale, like his brain was struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. "What in the hell?" he muttered. I followed his gaze. Below us was a wide open clearing, large green grass that stood out strangely against the surrounding woods. And in that clearing were bodies. Dozens of them. They were arranged in a scattered clusters, some alone, some lying next to each other. All of them were pale, all of them completely naked. Some lay flat on their backs. Others curled up like they were trying to shield themselves. A few were twisted in unnatural angles. Arms stretched out like they had been crawling or trying to get away. But from what? Even from the air, I could see something was deeply wrong with them. Some looked burnt, skin blackened and cracked. but there was no ash, no fire damage on the ground. The grass around them was green, too green, like something had killed them where they lay, without touching the world around them. And they were all bald, every single one, men, women, if there were children among them. I couldn't tell, but they all had smoothed, bare scalps and sunken, starved bodies. They didn't look like they belonged to this place, or maybe even this world. My dad didn't say anything else. Roger made a tight circle over the scene, hovering silently for a moment before reaching for his radio. I couldn't hear everything he said, but his voice was sharp and urgent. Whoever he was talking to seemed just as confused as we were. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The longer I stared, the more unreal it all felt. Like a painting, like someone had arranged it. There were no tracks leading to the bodies, no signs of tents or belongings, no pathways through the woods, just a perfect clearing full of death. I asked, shouldn't we land? My dad looked at me and shook his head. Quick panicked. No, we're not going down there. That's when I knew it wasn't just horror in his eyes. It was fear. And something else. Recognition. We turned back. The ride back felt like a different trip entirely. None of us spoke. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting something to rise out of the trees and follow us. The silence in the cockpit was louder than the engine. When we landed, there was already a police car waiting by the pad. Within minutes, 2 more arrived. I remember thinking how strange that was. They hadn't seen what we saw. They only had our word and a frantic radio call, and yet they were already here. One of the officers asked to see the photos of my dad had taken. He snapped a few shots with a basic digital camera. No zoom lens, nothing fancy. He handed the camera over without argument. I didn't even get to look at them. The officer said they needed it for evidence and promised to return it soon. He sounded calm, almost too calm, like he'd done this before. And the weird part, my dad didn't argue, not even a little bit. Just nodded and thanked them. After that, we went to a small dinner. Roger didn't say much. My dad barely touched his food. I couldn't stop shaking. That night, I asked him what he meant when he said the bodies didn't look human. He stared at me for a long time before finally answering. I don't know, Caroline. They just didn't look right. That was the last real conversation we had about it. The camera never came back. A few weeks later, a package arrived from my dad's place. No return address, no note. Inside the camera, smashed to pieces. The SD card was missing. We never heard from Roger again. My dad said he tried calling a few times, but the number was disconnected. Eventually, he stopped trying. I've tried to move on. Tried to convince myself it was some strange accident, or a mass delusion, or even a government secret we weren't supposed to see. But some nights, I still dream about that field, about the bodies. Only in the dream, they're not lying still, they're moving, crawling, reaching, and one of them always looks up at me, and it smiles. In the summer of 1966, I went camping with 2 of my closest friends, George and Arnold, at Crystal Lake, Vermont. We were teenagers then, just trying to have a good time away from adults and their rules. The goal was simple: drink some cheap beer, maybe smoke a little weed, and sleep under the stars without anyone telling us what to do. And just to be clear, we hadn't smoked anything that night, not a single hit. That matters because for years afterwards, people who heard our story tried to blame it on drugs. But I remember everything about that night with a clarity that's followed me for decades. We were stone sober when it happened. There were official campgrounds nearby, but we purposely set up far off the main trails, deep in the woods, away from noisy families and noisy park rangers, just us, our fire, and the dark Vermont forest around us. That night we were sitting around the fire laughing about some dumb story involving orange juice and a cheerleader George had embarrassed himself in front of. The moon was light, relaxed, until we heard the sound. It started faint, like someone knocking 2 heavy benches together. Slow, deliberate. Not twigs snapping in the wind. This was intentional. Stonk, stonk, stonk. We figured it might be a deer rubbing its antlers on a tree, or maybe just a branch caught in the breeze. We tried to ignore it, but the rhythm kept going. It got louder, closer, and something about it just felt wrong. George stood up. He had this look in his eye, like he was ready to beat the hell out of whoever was messing with us. George always had a short fuse. He was the type who went looking for trouble if it didn't find him first. "George, where you going?" Arnold called. George didn't answer. He just started marching uphill towards the sound. But here's what was weird. I could have sworn the noise was coming from a different direction entirely. Behind Arnold, not ahead of him. Yet George seemed so sure, so focused. We followed, reluctantly. The terrain got rough fast. Tree roots, deeps in the ground, branches that clawed our clothes. My flashlight flickered once and I felt this chill creep up my spine. When we reached the top of the hill, George suddenly took off running. "They're up here," he shouted. We tried to catch up. My lungs were burning, and I nearly twisted my ankle in a trench, but we kept going. Somewhere ahead, George was yelling again, telling us to hurry up. Eventually we found him, standing beside a wrecked campsite. The tents were shredded, the supplies were scattered, the fire pit was cold, and there was a smell, thick and metallic, like meat left in the sun. Then we saw it. A man's body half crushed beneath a massive boulder that had collapsed part of the tent. His legs stuck out at an unnatural angle. His arms reached forward like he had been trying to crawl out. I couldn't see his face clearly, but something about the stillness of it all, the sheer violence that must have come before, froze me in place. Arnold gagged and stumbled back. What the hell is that smell? George didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, I think I saw the one who did it. That was when the knocking started again, but now it was everywhere. Dozens of branches pounded against each other in chaotic, overlapping rhythms. Too fast, too inhuman. Sounds came from the trees, some from the ground, and then I realized it wasn't just noise. It was communication, a signal, a warning, or maybe a call. We were surrounded. The three of us turned and ran. No discussion, no plan, just pure panic. George was in front. It was ironic, in a way. We chased him up the hill, and now we're chasing him back down, trying to escape whatever we stumbled into. "I'm sorry," George kept shouting between breaths. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Arnold didn't answer. He was too busy screaming. I looked back once, just once, and I wish I hadn't. In the trees behind us, silhouetted by moonlight, were three figures. Tall, slouched, hairy, not quite human. One of them moved through the branches like it weighed nothing. The others stayed low, moving fast on all fours. But none of them rushed us. They stayed close, but not too close. They were hurting us, watching. We made it back to camp. George grabbed his fillet knife. We gathered on the far side of the fire, huddled together, staring out into the trees. The fire popped and crackled. The shadows shifted, and still the knocking continued in the distance, like an army of unseen hands was drumming against the trees. We didn't sleep, we didn't talk. We just sat at the fire and threw on more wood whenever it got low. Somehow, the fire felt like the only thing keeping them back. When the sun finally started to rise, the knocking stopped. We waited another hour before moving. Then we packed up our gear in silence and made the mile-long hike to Arnold's car. I expected to see one of those things watching us from the trees, but we didn't hear a sound. We reported the wrecked campsite to the local police later that day, gave them the location, described what we saw. Nobody ever followed up. I'm an old man now, but I still think about that night more than I like to admit. The tapping, the crushed tent, the eyes in the dark. Some nights, I wake up swearing I've heard that same knocking again, just beyond my house, just beyond the trees. I still sleep with a fire in the fireplace, just in case.